Hello. Jen, how's it?
Fine, and you?
Good.
Thank you for this.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, and thank you also for inviting me to, to speak to you, but also to collaborate. I think that's quite important.
Yeah. Well, I've been wanting to ask you these questions for a very long time, and so this presents a good moment.
Okay.
And yeah, we're talking to an international audience.
Okay.
So maybe the first thing we should do is to talk about the world that you've created here and speak, if you would, a little bit about the significance of the things that you brought to our conversation and how you use them to instigate performance.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that is striking for me about the way that you work is that things are not props.
No, definitely they are not.
In your performative world.
Yeah. I think for me also that things carry so much stories in them that the moment we start interacting with them, they also evoke certain stories in us, and those stories might come in different senses. So at the heart of my attempt is to, is to try and remember the home of events that I come from culturally. Places where had stories being told around them, had various forms of creative expressions that told us different stories in terms of the ancestral stories, the dreams, the rites of passages that all form part of the performative stuff. So being in the theater, in the Western form of theater that is constructed, and me telling certain stories that I think belong to a particular place in myself and in people that I tell the story with, but also for the people that I tell the story with, I've always been agitated or attempt to transform the place itself to be more or less like where I think the stories come from in a way. So things like props, things like that are not props, like objects and things that are used from carrying certain meaning, that by touching them, by talking to them, they've got stories, they've got life in them, they breathe, they've got spirit in them, but also they've got history.
Right, so it's not so much about animating the object through your action, but rather that the object animates us, that it already has a life.
Yes. So the object itself it's part of the dialogue of the story. So if you are the body in space and you are using that object is a third character, if you like. And that's that particular object or that particular thing that you are engaging with, for me, in a way, find a way of complexing and deepening the meaning making that is happening on the floor. So that the world itself, but also the objects themselves form part of sensorium of the place, of transforming the space, so that the sensorium is not only audio, the sensorium is not only in smell and taste, but also the sensorium is only in the sight of seeing things that take us to different places. By just the sight, it evokes smell, it evokes feeling, it evokes certain things. And of course, these elements, let's call them elements for now, or certain kinds of figures or bodies or things that are living in the space, they live beyond the theater. They exist in the true world, in the real world. And some of them are personal things that always come back into the space. So this is my personal thing that I was given. So the story and my family story will always find space in the space that we say that we rehearse in a way. That it makes the actual artistic and creative expression not to be far away to the reality. That if we are lighting in Beko, which is the sage, which is the herb that one is using for different purposes, is popular of being burnt because of the smell it creates in the space, transforms the space to many people who are familiar with it into other spaces. It transforms and transports people. So I seek to create something that I call the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd is an event space in our traditional rural spaces where things happen. In a practical way, the crowd is the place where you keep the cattle, the livestock story. But also
could you relate that to the theatre as a communal place of gathering, of
yes, no, definitely,
ritual, of
yes,
learning,
exactly. So yeah, so in any kind of form of storytelling for me, where people are gathering and witnessing jointly, collectively, witnessing something, for me, that's a communal space. That space already has a huge potential of creating what Victor Tema refers to as a communitas space. So it's a space of ritual in a way. So it becomes a ritual, and it's one rituals can be very, very mundane, can be the lighting of the candle, but some of the rituals can be, I've always said that I want to create a theater of prayer, where people are praying, where people are a theater of healing, a theater of reminding us what we have lost, but also helping us to move forward. So the idea of homesick at home, that even in theater I feel at home, but I'm still homesick. How do I remedy that? How do I mitigate that? That by coming in this space, because if I recognize it's a space of storytelling, even if some walls are so, I recognize it. In a way, but still there's something that is missing into it. I recognize certain stories, but there's something that is missing into that story. So for me, objects, things, and smells, when I bring those things like the grass mat, I recognize the chair. It's not like I'm going to lie and say I don't recognize the chair. But how do I make that story to be so more at home to me? It's what does it mean to remove the chairs and sit down? I recognize the shoes. I'm not going to lie that I don't know the shoes. But what does it mean to take off the shoes and perform barefoot in the space and be grounded into it? I recognize the thing. I recognize the teacup. I recognize the lamp. But what does it mean to take a candle and light it with the matches and hear the sound of that matches? Immediately those things takes me home. So my world, in a way, continues. I can tell any story, but putting those elements into those stories, putting those objects, they, in a way, they have in text, when we talk about intertextuality, there's always an intertextuality, there's always some words that play into complicating things and texture them more.
So these are like inter-objects?
They inter-objectalize things in a way,
they live in both worlds.
In both worlds. They live in both worlds, yeah, but also they exist in the world in between those worlds. Yes. And I think the world of the theater mostly operates in the world in between.
So let's talk a little bit about that in terms of time. Because we've spoken spatially.
Yes, no, definitely. Yeah.
Like what do these objects provoke in terms of the time that we're here in the theatre watching the story unfold, alongside a deeper time, perhaps, or a future time even, or a time past?
You see, that's quite important, the space and time in the telling of the story. Hence, I always say that the couple of years ago, once I found out that actually my world and my stories are truly and sincerely exist in a dream time scale. And for me, that it gave me so much liberation, because it was that time of the spiritual ecstasy. It's that time where everything is possible, but also the time where the healing is possible also. Because if you are not bound by the chain and the morality of the waking time world, but also you are out. So the time itself is mutated, so is the space. Hence, most of my productions are not concerned about the time, about the morning, the evening, and yesterday. They are not even concerned about 1900 to 2023. So I will use most of the time when I deal with the excavation of the historical stories, I will use those stories, but at the center of asking of using those stories is to ask the question, what happened in the past means the present. Never mind when the past is so present. I think there's something also important that I don't concern myself quite a lot with, like aesthetically in terms of scenographically. I don't concern myself of creating a complete picture. I concern myself of creating fragments that hold certain pictures in there. That the picture is never complete, but you will start putting things together, but you never complete the picture.
Your objects are literally on the same level as subjects,
Exactly.
right? That they are,
Yes.
that there's a continuum there.
Exactly, and they can move,
They can
but also
move.
in various ways of moving. The candle we can see the candle moving with light, by actually spreading the light around, but also the impact we can see moving with the smell. We can see the stories traveling through the smell, filling the entire space. We can see that. And the times don't need to utter anywhere. I can spend like 5 minutes, actually even 15 minutes, this in constructing this world.
Right.
You understand?
Yes.
Already people are constructing their own stories and making their own meaning. And then during that time, they go back in time. They also go forward in time, and they exist. And at the moment they start mutation, they are making a politic course of who they are in this particular moment. But also they start tapping on places of head. And while they do that, they tap on places of breathing into that head and finding meaning and transforming that head into a more better thing. At times it becomes tricky.
Yes, because I mean, there's also the sense that you know, one could unlock
exactly
something unpleasant.
So our theaters, never mind the physical and the architectural physicality of it. Our theaters also have policies, things that police us into certain things, but also there are things that are expected to say. So if you promise us that your production is like 90 minutes, it can't be 120 now, please, without an interval. Now, when we want to create these pieces of theaters that transport us, but also not only us, even the audience, even the performers themselves, get transported in different places. The trigger warning, exactly that. You know, it was quite interesting that also the technology that we use. You know, I had a conversation with a colleague and then about that notice of trigger warning, so that even the word trigger suggests a negative thing.
It did, didn't it?
It can't be a trigger. A trigger is related to a gun. A trigger is something that explodes, you know, something that makes an unwanted thing to take place in a way. But it's something that has been buried.
Right, but what if you invite in change?
It's something that we always had. It's something that we always had. It has been buried, it has been locked away, it has been embarrassed, it has been demonized, it has been very evilized, if there's that word, evilized, in a way that my piece of theater, the way that I work with everything and each object and each sensorial kind of thing allows and unlocks those things. And it unlocks those powers. And they are scary, but they are not evil. And they are not something that says, oh, you are making people sick. It's not sickness too. It's unfortunate it unlocks those kinds of things. It happens to a place of gathering where there's high spirit of collectivity, of people singing with great sense and stuff. So, and it's a muscle that even in the training of our actors we don't engage with. It's something that in our sight we don't see. Have you ever gone around UCT? You've seen pictures of plants and stuff. Have you really seen a picture of a burning bed? Just a picture, just as a way of saying that it's something that I'm used to. I've seen this before. Do you understand? I mean, when we started talking about translating of certain things, and when we said that actually as part of the first aid kit, let's have IMPEP. We said in the same comment of transformation. Now at least we have IMPEP in some of the first aid kits as a site of recognizing and acknowledging of making this place home for everyone. Because we actually understand. And so as our work of theater.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, our work of performance is that how do we make, even if it does nothing to you spiritually. I mean, I even refer to say that when I was doing my first year here in 1994, I was so homesick. I didn't know that I was homesick. I was so homesick. And I was highly political because I came from the politics, you know, at that time. And I came here in my first year, we did all these other production that had nothing to do with me. I was taught different words with different languages, with different people that I've never been with them in the same class. And then in the second year, Mark and Jenny did a production called Sunjata. In that production, I've never felt so much at home. I said, actually, there's hope in this place. It was in my second year. Actually, there's a hope in this place. In that, I remember praise poetry. I remember whistling. I remember sticks like this. I remember grass mats that my mother used to sit on and tell me stories. I remember those grass mats in this space. And I said, actually, it's possible to make this space home. Just those objects.
And those are objects.
Those are
right?
objects. Those are objects. I don't remember what they say. I remember seeing grass mats. And just seeing that, I stopped seeing the theater. It took me at home.
Right.
It took me at my place of storytelling. It took me in different spaces of events that hold so many stories and metaphors into that. And for me, I really, from that, I said, that's the theater that I want.